Well, hey, y'all. Welcome back to the podcast, episode 2 of season 2 about Advent and Christmas and what makes Christmas Christmas. Joseph, one of your hosts here, one of your pastors, delighted to have all of the music represented here today at Oak Grove United Methodist Church with John Cowden, traditional music ministry, and other assorted duties, including Waffle Off and Choir Tour and all these other things that you'll get to hear about in a minute. And Atticus Hicks, our director of modern worship, with many other talents and hats and all the things, including an actual hat today. Glad to have you here on the podcast. We're talking in this season about a whole host of things around Advent and Christmas and what makes Christmas feel like and actually be Christmas. Today on the podcast, we're talking about music and how music makes Christmas, or in this case, Advent. And so delighted to have y'all here on the podcast.
Thanks for having us. Glad to be here.
Glad to have y'all both here on the podcast and talk about music and how all of our church traditions and music filter together in this season of Advent and Christmas here at Oak Grove. So we'll start off with just a little bit of, like we do every podcast, of sort of who are this cast of characters? Who are you? So John, Atticus, whichever one of you wants to go first, give us a little background on you and how you got here and your interest in music and church things.
Well, I've been doing full-time music ministry for about 20 years, and my entire career has been just in this kind of small area. I started out, I did 3 years at Embry Hills, then I moved down to Decatur first, where I did 13 years, and then right at the beginning of the pandemic, I started at Oak Grove. That was a really good time. I didn't start out my life to do that. I didn't go to college thinking this is what I was going to do. I just kind of fell into it after school during a year while we were hanging around Shreveport for a minute, and decided that I wanted to work with people and I wanted to make music. I wanted to help people. And I found this is a way that I could do it. So I came out to Emory to learn a little bit more about church music and choral music. They had a MSM program at the time, Master of Sacred Music, and found a job out here. And then I've just kind of stuck with that for this whole time.
Thanks, John. Glad to have you here on staff, and was delighted when you joined our staff during the pandemic to help sort out a lot of our video things for traditional worship. What a season. But I'm glad we're here now. And let's hear a little bit from Atticus about sort of who you are and how you ended up here in the musical world at Oak Grove.
Sure. Well, I have been in bands for about as long as I can remember, and I've always loved music. But I was a nuclear security analyst in a previous life. I helped found an export control firm out of college during the Great Recession of 2008, 2009, and that busted. And so in the meantime, looking for new employment, my mom, who is a United Methodist pastor, said that there was a church in Decatur looking for a worship leader, and I had played guitar in youth group, and I led at a few college ministries. So I applied for the job, intending to stick around for about 6 months while I was looking for other work, and really kind of found my calling. I sort of fell into this, and I've been here for 11, 12 years now. I have not served at all the churches in the local area. I have really benefited in my time here from some great directors of traditional music who have been doing this a little bit longer. Janet Johnson was here when I got here, and then Ed Scruggs, and now John Cowden. It's been a privilege to work with all of them and learn kind of how to navigate music in a church ecosystem. It's a little different than playing bars and clubs on Friday and Saturday night. But it's also a lot the same. You know, forming musical relationships is, I'm not often, my interpersonal skills, it's not my strong suit, but I really like connecting with people through music. And I believe that music is a great connecting factor. And one of the greatest parts about church is building community and building relationship. And so, yeah, I have loved my time here at Oak Grove. I've learned a lot, and that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, that's awesome. Things you didn't know unless you watch or listen to the podcast, that he used to work in nuclear security. Sure. I got a background in forestry. John, you got any weird undergrads?
No, I'm boring. I knew I wanted to do music from the time I was in, second grade. So
nice. Me too, but I thought I was going to be a rock star.
I did double major in music and physics for my first semester of school, but then I dropped it at some point because I felt like if I was going to do music, I really needed to lean into that and not dilute my education. And also, I didn't like calculus.
You just chose to unlock the secrets of the universe in a different way.
That's exactly right.
Perfect. Well, it's really fun to see the connections that we have to music and how it's been influential and meaningful in both of your lives, but also in how you've seen it be important for the life of our church. Here at Oak Grove, again, we have 3 worship services every Sunday at 8:30 and 11 traditional in the sanctuary, 10:45 modern in the fellowship hall. Also, during midweek, on Wednesdays at 5, we have a midweek communion service. That's a short, condensed worship service, smaller crowd, but wonderful service you can see there as well. We stream every single week at 10:45 and 11 a.m., and that's a big part of how we connect through music as a congregation. In addition to all of the Sunday morning or Wednesday worship services, we have all kinds of music happening throughout the season. And as we get towards the end of the podcast, we'll talk about some of those opportunities for you as a podcast audience to get involved if you're not already, or for things you can stream and watch and worship online with us as we get into that season of Advent. Before we get into some of the what makes Advent, Christmas music side, I wanted to sort of set the mood for Advent for each of y'all. But tell me something, do you have a Christmas memory or a thing? It can relate to music or not, just something that makes Christmas Christmas or Advent for you.
We have a lot of Christmas traditions that we hold dear, and but recently I have a 7-year-old and a 3-year-old, and having young children has really made Christmas magic again. All of the Christmas movies and the building gingerbread houses and the decorating the house and putting up the tree and everything like that. But I am sure it has somewhat to do with my influence and my wife's influence. But the boys, one of their favorite parts of Christmas is singing the songs of the season. And so hearing their little voices sing the songs that I've grown up with and have become a part of who I am is really cool. Their favorite one last year was Pamis Mamida, which is
okay. So what is
Feliz Navidad.
So say the word again. It's what?
Pamis Mamida.
Nice.
Was coined last year, but we spend a lot of time having Christmas dance parties and singing the song, because I think it's kind of one of the ways to keep the magic alive, is singing together, and what better time to do it than Christmas? Yeah,
and whether that starts in July for some of y'all, I know who you are out there, for your Spotify, anytime you want to listen to it. Okay, so mostly just after November 1st when Mariah Carey thaws out and then, jumps into singing.
Yeah. I mean, I have been accused of listening to Christmas music too early before.
Okay.
But I mean, once the culture sort of shifts that direction, we go all out.
Nice. Okay. John, what about yourself for your Christmas memories?
Yeah. This is going to foreshadow a little bit about, I think, what I'm going to talk about, but we decorate after Thanksgiving. We start on Friday after Thanksgiving. We won't put up decorations before that. There's no judgment for people who choose to do that. I mean, whatever you want to do is fine.
We still have Halloween decorations up.
Well, and obviously, we start working on Christmas and music ministry in August this year. So I have one foot in that world anyway, but then we don't, as a family, we don't start decorating until after Thanksgiving, because Thanksgiving is my favorite holiday. So what I enjoy most is this sort of dialogue between new traditions and old traditions, new memories, and we make new memories together as we decorate, and we start to pull those things out of the box, and you start to remember the stories about when you acquired this decoration, or why this decoration means so much to this one person. Like, why do we have the Snoopy tree down in the basement, which is really just a tree that has the Snoopy ornaments from all the Whitman's boxes hanging on it? Or why do we put this particular nutcracker? Every piece we pull out has a story. And in fact, one of the ways when we get to the point where we have to clean out, one of the ways we decide that is, what is the story with this? And if we can't remember, then maybe we don't need that anymore. Sometimes it's just a bauble that we picked up along the way. I hate to think that we just completely forgot about someone in our lives, but I mean, that's the way it goes, I guess, sometimes.
It happens, right?
But then there are some things that you've obviously, there are some things that I have a Christmas ornament that my mom painted for me in 1978 for my first Christmas, and it goes on my tree every year. And we have our kids' first Christmas ornaments, and we have our first year married ornament. Those are low hanging fruit for creating memories, but just weird items like a ceramic Christmas tree matters. And then how those start to weave together, all these memories of the past kind of come together in a moment and create a present and a future. So, like one thing that we had to do was reconcile. Santa takes a different path for Lisa's house than the path Santa took for my house. And so we had to have conversation around how that was going to work. And so you wind up with this new fusion, which I think is really cool. And a new thing that now Lisa and me and our kids, we're all going to remember going forward.
That's awesome. So sort of the multiverse of Santa. It feels very Marvel. I know y'all are both fans. You can probably speak way better than I can in those languages. But I think it is neat to see how these traditions sort of layer themselves on top of each other. In the church world, when we talk about music and traditions of the church. So that's anything the church has done probably more than once, right? If you've done it once before, it's now a tradition.
The way we've
always done it.
Yep.
Right. It's the way we've always done it. Now there's some danger in that, but there's also some rich understanding of ritual and pattern. One of the things that we find in Christian tradition is this sense of pattern and cycles that we see in the calendar year, we see in the church year. I'm teaching my 3-year-old, nearly 4-year-old about seasons. And after summer comes fall and the leaves fall off the tree. But there's these things we learn from early on as children, all the way through into our 90s and 100s and all those things, that the church life shapes some of that for us. Inside of Christian tradition, Advent didn't just, again, appear out of nowhere. It started as a sort of 4th, 5th century, a miniature Lent for people to get back into church who had been out of it necessarily. How Advent now functions and Christmas function in our world now, for many people, it is one of those reconnection points for church. And so I find that to be meaningful and good. And then also, as a parent with little kids, when we just adopted our 3-year-old, she was 2 at the time, came into our lives, and I took some time away to be with her as a parent, some paternity leave, and we came to church that morning. Any of y'all with little kids and in your phases of life and in your phases previously, now that your kids are a little older, getting to church, showing up to worship, showing up to anything with your kids dressed, hair, clothes, relatively okay and good, and you maybe in close to your right mind to attend a service of worship or something like that is a lot. And so for people who come on Christmas and Easter, that may be their traditions, this family nostalgia piece, but also a deep sense of connection to something real and meaningful. It also is a time when our church music and our church worship is elevated, perhaps, but also allows people to come and experience something meaningful. And that's a big part of what church is for our neighborhoods and our people in the area. But also, that's really critically important. I see that as a pastor and as a parent, that we want to make sure things are excellent when people are there, and that there might be some other points of connection that they might have later on with our church and community. So when we think about Advent and music and these songs that we sing, as a pastor, I often say this line, and it's true. People do not walk out humming the sermon. Thank you, Beth Sugart, my choir director, when I was like in 2nd grade, and then she found out I was a pastor and told me this. She's right. We at Oak Grove have remarkable, excellent music. No matter what your flavor or style of service, we have people who go back and forth between the services, who will go back and watch one of the other services they missed that week. And during the pandemic, we had a lot of our older congregation who would say, I loved watching both services this week. And one of the comments you remember about Modern was, I liked it because I could turn the volume up or down, which was kind of a nice way of having...
Down mostly.
Mostly down, but also when you think about a sensory environment, we had folks during the pandemic engaging in all these different forms of worship and appreciating different styles and flavors of music and how it lends itself to both the liturgy that we do in any of the services or the Holy Communion elements. There's so much we share in common in these styles of worship. And when we get into these seasons of Advent and Christmas, there's some remarkable music that happens. It's just a part of what draws us back into church and in that community life. And so today on the podcast, we're going to have some examples from each of these styles of worship and services that John and Atticus have selected. We'll watch them, so you'll be listening to them and checking them out, and then we'll sort of share a little bit about what those things are and why they're meaningful, especially for Atticus and for John in our congregation. So John's going to start first and bring us a moment from the Christmas concert in 2022, but say a little something to help set up the clip for us.
So the way that we do the Christmas concert here is the way that I've been doing it for a number of years, and it actually has its roots in a Christmas pageant that I was in starting in about second grade. I was at an Episcopal school, and what we did for our Christmas pageant was really a lessons in carols. Like we had lessons in carols reading, including the John reading. It was a very high church Christmas pageant. It's the only way I know to describe it. Because of that influence, that Anglican influence, it always started with Once in Royal David City. There was always a soloist who sang the first verse, and then we came in and processed, and there was always a descant at the end. And so that moment, especially that last verse when the descant's going and everybody's just singing to the top of their lungs, that has always then been the moment that Christmas happens. So I don't make many decisions in ministry about what I want or what I need or what my preference is. I spend a lot more time thinking about what our community needs, our people, the singers, the audience. But every year, this one is for me. And so I picked this moment because of the way it taps into memory, which is how I think about the importance of music in the season.
Nice.
Yeah, so just because of my history with that piece, that takes me back to a much simpler time for me, a much more innocent time for me in some ways. And so I just love to go back to that place. And that's, I think, when I think about how music interacts with the season, it's all wrapped up in how music interacts with our memory, because things that are stored with music get stored in a different place in your brain, in a deeper place. So that's why you probably already heard about how people with Alzheimer's they can't talk, but they can sing whole songs. And that's what music does. It's like cement, kind of holds it all together. And so that one takes me back, and I have a dream that for some of those kids who are singing that first verse in 10 or 20 or 30 years, they'll still remember this. And when they hear that song, they'll remember that time they were in the Christmas concerts at Oak Grove. And maybe they'll come back and see a picture on the wall, because I try to put pictures up of things like that. It reminds me of, there's a scene in Field of Dreams where Terry Mann is talking about baseball. He says people will come. I actually printed it out here, his whole speech. They'll come to Iowa for reasons they can't even fathom. They'll turn up your driveway not knowing for sure why they're doing it. They'll arrive at your door as innocent as children longing for the past. It's money they have and peace they lack. And he basically goes on to describe how it'll be like they went to this baseball game that they remember from a long time ago. And that's what music does. And he makes the point in that monologue that America has come and gone and been shaped and reborn, but baseball has been constant through all of it. Well, I see your, as long as America's been around, and raise you as long as time for how long music's been around doing exactly the same thing. So that's why I picked this clip. And that's what I think draws people back in around Christmas time. You know, people come at Christmas and Easter because they're longing for something that they remember. They're longing for a simpler time, a more innocent time. Yeah, in the script, Terry Mann says, "This field, this game, it's a part of our past. It reminds us of all that once was good, and it could be again." And so music reminds us of all that was good and that could be again. So that's just very powerful, and one of the things that I think draws people in.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love what you said about how memory and music play together, that they work on different hemispheres of the brain and are stored in different places. And that's one of a powerful memory I have of my grandmother, my dad's mom, Granny, and how she knew the music, and even 10 years in with Alzheimer's was able to sing some of the songs with me when I was a little kid. So that's powerful memory for me as well. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
I think that is true of the season. And that's why I think, Joseph, you were talking about the music during these heavily liturgical seasons in the church world being heightened, because we do place so much emphasis on the things that happen around the season. And like John said, the music is sort of what anchors us there, especially in an environment like this where you have, one of my favorite things about this piece that you've arranged is how additive it is. Like the music underscores the heart of what we're hoping will happen in these rooms and in these spaces when we gather together for worship, is, that someone will light the flame and it will catch a spark and grow, so that the entire room is just sort of breathing in this harmonious chorus. You start with a small voice and it just you add in the congregation, you add in the other choirs and the brass and the bells, and it just, when we all add our voices like that together, it becomes bigger than what it could ever be on its own. This arrangement particularly really underscored that. It felt like Christmas, and that's...
Well, and it has, the music of Christmas also has inertia. Like most Christmas songs, there aren't a lot of new Christmas songs, right? People write them and then we make fun of them. But the ones that endure, like we were talking last year coming up to Christmas about what some of the music for the services was going to be. And I remember, Atticus, you said that, it's going to be Christmas hymns, only we'll play them the way we do them. But it's those same songs because they're so deeply rooted. That's one of the things that made me think that the touching the memory is what's so critical about them, because the only way we generate a new Christmas song is if it has some other memory attached to it and it starts to catch with more and more people, like you were talking about. Mm-hmm. So when you have a new song and it starts to generate some kind of institutional memory or communal memory, then it can start to get some traction and be a thing.
Well, you were mentioning that, the new Christmas songs, and as someone whose job is in like the new space where we have to sing the new songs, it's interesting to me that even like the most successful newly written modern worship Christmas songs are ones that borrow from hymnody. I mean, there's always going to be a refrain of Angels We've Heard on High or Joy to the World is favorite. I mean, there's one that we do every year. So, I mean, we've done it's been out for 7 or 8 years now. So it's not like new, but it's newer than Once in Royal David City.
We've always done it that way.
But it's in the Bleakwood Midwinter set to a different arrangement. And I mean, it's people get behind it because it may not be the same melody, but it's familiar enough. And so I feel like there's a thing with modern worship where it can become really performative because it is like the top 40 pop songs and everything. And I don't really like that. I think there's power in congregational singing, and I think people should be able to participate in congregational singing. And so the thought of introducing new Christmas songs is always daunting because I know there's 4 weeks that I can introduce this song. So either I'm going to introduce it the first week of Advent, and then we're going to play it again the second week of Advent, and then we're going to close with it on the third week of Advent, and then it's Christmas Eve. Like, so you get like one song a year that really resonates. Modern worship gets accused a lot of like 4 chords and 6 words over and over and over again. But there's also a whole side of it that is like beautiful poetry, and especially in this season where it is like the story that we've heard our entire lives. I really like some of the songs that come out. I'm like, man, that is a beautiful song that we will never sing in church because people don't want to hear the story in a new way. They want to hear the story they know in the way they've heard it. And so, using some of those special moments to highlight some newer stuff is fine, but it is hard to make new Christmas music congregational.
Well, that's also a short horizon to let a song season inside of a person so that they're comfortable singing it. Mm-hmm. Like even when we do a new hymn, maybe not at Christmas time, if we're going to do a new hymn, we have to be careful about how we introduce it, and we need to make sure that we sing it enough times that people can get it. And hymns are also, I mean, you talk about modern worship being repetitive. Hymns also quite repetitive. We do the same thing 4, 5, 6 times in a row.
Yeah.
But usually by the 6th time, we're you can start to catch on, but it's the same thing. Like you just don't have a lot of time to teach that new song before you got to move on to the next season.
Yep. And so that transitions well into the Christmas song I'm going to be talking about, which is like the original Christmas song. This is a clip from actually the 2020 pandemic. It's O Come, O Come, Emmanuel. And it's one of the oldest hymns that we sing. It's a special song for our band around Christmas time, and particularly this recording that we're about to see. And I can talk more about that in a second. But
sure.
So here's O Come, Emmanuel, mashed up with Pink Floyd's Wish You Were Here.
Sweet.
spring come and chill our spirits by thine advent gift, and drive away the shades of night, and peace the clouds and bring us light. How I wish you were here. We're just all our souls swimming in a fishbowl, year after year, rolling over the same old ground. But have we found the same old fear? Wish you were here. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. Oh come, Emmanuel, and ransom captive Israel. Artsy fade out. Love it. So that was recorded in like October of 2020. Our youngest son was born in November, and so when we were filming,
I get it. Y'all both have real young kids, and
Yeah.
they're in high school, and I'm old.
you're old, but the timeline was so sped up for this. Like I knew I wanted to be able to take time with my family when my son was born. And so we were recording for Christmas, like you talked about starting to get ready for Christmas in August. We were like starting to record for Advent in August. So this was maybe like late September, early October, where we were filming this. But it was before we were all even filming back in the same place. So those were all like the one shots where it's just us in the shot was just us recording by ourselves, and then Taylor is a wizard and would take all of the one shots of us recording by ourselves and stitch them together to make it look like we were in the same place, which is why there's only a few of those shots, because it's pretty time intensive to do that.
And a huge shout out for Taylor Penley. If you don't know Taylor, super awesome, amazing human, and an amazing technological marvel who makes a lot of things happen here at the church, from website to all the AV. What's his official title?
Magician?
Boss
of all the AV
Boss
things.
Pendley.
So if you're listening to this, you can go see this. Actually, you can see all these clips on YouTube, on the church YouTube channel, youtube.com/OGUMC. You can also watch it on Spotify, actually, and then go back to listening and then go back to watching, which I find just mythical and magical. But yeah, Taylor, amazing AV. We all got really good at filming things during the pandemic, from the John and doing all the editing for traditional music and blurring all that together and making that work, but also Taylor and Atticus and our team doing all those things. But yeah.
One of the most wonderful things about Taylor is his ability to just like play it cool when I come up with a really ridiculous idea. Because we had been filming from our homes early in the pandemic, and I just got really tired of the look of people's like living room wall, and so we had this idea of like, could we do this there were several iterations of it, and I think by like Christmas 2020, we
got it really good.
We were really nailing it.
The rotoscoping of all the people placing, and don't move that one camera.
Mm-hmm.
Do not touch that camera.
Yeah.
If it moves, we can't align the shots. Yeah, that was a big one.
So filming for Christmas Eve 2020 was the first time we were ever actually all back on the same stage, which was really special. I was very tempted to pick one of those clips. But this song to me, it sort of encapsulates the spirit of Advent as I see it, in terms of like the longing for something that has yet to come, which can be, the baby Jesus is coming, or in sort of like the sense of God making all things right, reconciling creation, in anticipation of that day as well. I think the dual nature of the hymn is cool. I really love him set in a minor key, as everyone at this table knows.
Yes. Even if it's major, we can make it minor.
We can make it extra minor.
Like during Lent, when you're like, we can make that minor. Yeah, let's take this happy hymn and make it sound minor.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, I love that. But this one's already done for me.
That's good.
And I love the history of the hymn. It dates back to some of the early monastic antiphons in like the 8th and 9th century. There was this tradition where it's called the Christmas octave. The 7 days before Christmas, they start with these antiphons, and I forget all the Latin names. I had them on my phone because I think it's really cool what they did. These bored monks back in the 8th century would like hide acrostics within. So the 7 antiphons are O Sapientia, which is wisdom; O Adonai, which is the Hebrew word for God; O Radix Jesse, which is the stem or root of Jesse; O Clavis David, which is the key of David; O Orions, which is the day spring; O Rex Genetium, which is the king of the Gentiles. And then on Christmas Eve, directly following the reading of the Magnificat, would be O Emmanuel. And if you listen to the, we don't sing on that in that version. We didn't sing all of the verses, but a lot of these antiphons make themselves known in the verses of the modern hymn. Put together, the first letter of each of the antiphons after O is sarcore, Sarcore. But then if you reverse that backwards, it's ero cras, which in Latin means I will be present tomorrow, which is like mind-blowing, right? These like monks just sitting around with nothing else to do. Wordplay at Christmas time. I love it. But then
New York Times puzzle.
But the hymn, didn't really exist until like the 17th century in Latin. The tune comes, I think it dates back to like the 15th century, French nuns. It was like a funeral procession, which it sort of sounds like.
Sounds kind of dirgy.
A dirgy, yeah.
Yeah.
And then in the 1850s, it was sort of written down and translated into English and mashed up with the tune, and I've been singing it ever since. But this, I mean, just the history of the hymn, you were talking about music being old as time itself. I think just like the fact that, our worshiping communities have been finding ways to tell the story of great anticipation since, thousands and thousands of years ago, and we're still doing it today. One of the things I really like about this is we try to do fun and interesting things at Christmas time to shake things up a little bit. And so mashing this up with a Pink Floyd song, Wish You Were Here, on the surface, it's like, well, yeah, that's what O Come, Come Emmanuel is saying. But like when Roger Waters wrote that song, he wrote it because he was sad that his friend Syd Barrett had succumbed to a mental break, and it was a shell of the man that he knew, and he really missed his friends. And when I tell you it took a few takes to get through this song in that context in 2020 of really longing for each other, you see some of the emotion on our faces even while we're playing that. It was just, there was this sense of really longing for our community and sort of calling out for each other across the airwaves, as it were. And so, I mean, I think this song is really good in terms of, it speaks to the double nature of Advent. And it also centers us, reminding us that, we need each other, and we need the community that God has given us here.
Well, it points to that. It points to that longing or the yearning. I mean, that's the Advent is that time of anticipation, and so that's what. If we do Advent for 4 weeks, that's what we're doing. We're trying to get ourselves ready to look to this expected coming, this kind of long expected thing. That, I mean, we know Jesus is going to be born. It happens every year. We do this every year. Yeah. There hasn't yet been a year when Jesus wasn't born, but somehow during that time we reconnect with the empty place that we have before Jesus gets here. And I think at that time, I mean, I was doing the same kinds of things, trying to figure out ways where we could feel connected, even though we couldn't see each other. And we did a song at that same time that was called "The Yearning," and it was about exactly that. This kind of looking for something that we can't put a finger on, but we know we're missing it when it's not here.
Yeah.
And I think that's true for a lot of folks who, again, are in our worshiping community or just in the neighborhood here around Oak Grove. Again, this podcast is made for our people here locally. There's other folks listening in other places too. But anywhere you might find yourself, there's always this sense that Advent and Christmas is this place where we can sort of rejoin. Again, that's how this whole thing got started, as this season of rejoining the church and finding that sense of community and belonging again. And I love how both of you have talked about how music does this for us. It's a powerful way that I think God uses music throughout time and history, and even still, to remind us that we're not alone, that we have people, whether we can sing and carry a tune, or if it's just for us in the car or for our kids. It's about our voices being used together, bringing all of who we are back into the community and the church in a way that adds value, not just for us, but for other people. And so if you find yourself in this season looking for places and ways to connect, both in music and worship, we have lots of those, and you're invited to that. So whether that's for any of the things we're doing in worship services on our Wednesdays or Sundays, but there's also some special things that we have going. And so y'all share a little bit about sort of what's happening this Advent season around music and ways people could come and be a part of that.
Yeah, for sure. We have the Christmas concert, which features most of the music ministry from grades 3 and up. We have 3 performances of that, which are on December 9th and 10th, 3:30 and 6 on the 9th, and then 6 on the 10th. There's no tickets this year. You can just show up to any one of those times. And it'll be actually that clip that we watched earlier was a clip from one of those, and it'll be flavored about that same way. This year, Joseph, Joseph, the father of Jesus, is talking. So that's going to be exciting. We also have a Christmas music mission where we're going to show up at the church. We're going to get some fun songs that everybody already knows. We're not going to be like trying to sing it in 4 parts. We're just going to grab some music that we all know, and we're going to head out to 3 different facilities to sing to Christmas Carol for the residents there. And then we're going to come back to the church and have some hot chocolate together. So I'm looking for up to about 45 people to participate in that. That'll be December 20th. It's a Wednesday evening. And then as we come into Christmas Eve, I do what we call the Y'all Come Choir. So on December 23rd, we have a 2-hour rehearsal, and then you can sing in one of the traditional services on Christmas Eve. So you don't have to have been here for a long time, and there's no commitment after that. So if you just want to come by and sing a few Christmas songs with a really good choir for Christmas Eve, and you get the benefit of the absolute best view of the candle lighting is from the choir loft. You get to see it go. So I would encourage you to be a part of that as well. Those are the main 3.
Cool. And if they have questions, they can find your email, but tell us your email address. They can reach out to you if they want to.
Yeah, absolutely. My email is jcowden@ogumc.org, and I'd love to hear from you if you have any questions.
Awesome. And we'll have that down in the show notes here as well if you're interested, or you can always go on the church website and find that. Great. Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, and the night before the music mission on December 19th at 6:30 p.m. in the fellowship hall, we're going to have a traveler's service. And what that is if you're going to be out of town for Christmas Eve and would like to still have a Christmas Eve flavored service, I will be putting together a band of some good friends, great musicians. Going to hopefully have some exciting stuff that I'm still trying to tie down, so I don't want to publicize it on a podcast. But CJ, our director of youth ministries, will be preaching. We will also have hot chocolate and cookies and candy canes and activities for kids. But it'll be a great time to be together in fellowship and worship for folks who are heading out of town for Christmas Eve, but still want to be able to have a Christmas Eve service with their church family.
If you take nothing else from this podcast, you should take that music is the most important thing for the season, but after that, and closely followed, like unto it even, is hot chocolate cookies and candy canes.
Yes,
Yeah,
correct.
obviously those things in that combination.
Yeah. And then also we're doing the liturgical calendar is a little different this year in that the fourth Sunday of Advent is also Christmas Eve. And so we will be doing one service, combined service in the fellowship hall this year on the morning of December 24th, and it will be the Advent 4 service. And then that evening we will have our standard Christmas Eve services, 3, 5, 5, 8.
But it's a 3 p.m. Yeah. It's a 3 p.m. children's service geared towards families with young children, grandparents in town, kids, everybody come on and do that. Wonderfully long enough to cover things and short enough for those of us with little kids. 5 p.m. traditional service in the sanctuary, 5 p.m. modern in the fellowship hall, and an 8 p.m. candlelight service in the sanctuary space as well. We'll be streaming 5 and 5 is my understanding. For anybody worshiping online, we'll be streaming both of the 5 p.m. services on Christmas as well as that morning service, the Advent 4 service in the 1045 modern space.
We'll also be streaming the Christmas concert, the Sunday version.
And we'll be streaming the Traveler service.
So pretty much
of
everything's going to get streamed at some point.
Well, but again, for all of our digital content and things that help people have those connections, if someone in your family is sick or you're traveling for work or you missed it, or hey, you were there and you want to go back and listen to that and experience that, again, as we actually get into the actual 12 days of Christmas, then that might be a really meaningful way for you to engage that when you're in downtime or your family's traveling and you're not with them, or you're trying to figure out how to have that sense of belonging. Our digital resources do that for a lot of people. And one other option we have for folks during this season, we know that in the season of lightness and darkness, there is some darkness, the sense of a blue Christmas, and understanding that for many people, this season highlights the absence of a loved one, or a break in a relationship or family ties, or just a really difficult and challenging year and that seasonal affective change in all the daylight times. So as we approach that season, we as a church want to offer what we call a service of hope, and that is going to be on Wednesday, December 13th, at 6 p.m. Here at the church, and we'll be having that service, streaming it as well, and offering that as a way for people to acknowledge the light in the darkness, but also that the darkness exists. So there's so much happening in the life of the church, from the Advent and all the start of those things, as well as leading into the Christmas and Epiphany seasons here at the church. I want to thank all of y'all for enjoying the podcast on video or on audio on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts, as well as on the YouTube channel, where a lot of folks are finding it there. Glad to have y'all with us on the podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Jinx.
Man, y'all are just
You owe
on
me a
it.
Coke. Double Jinx. You have 2 Cokes.
Awesome. I
Can't
hope
talk
both of
that, say
y'all.
your name 3 times.
I owe both of y'all a lot of Cokes. So again, glad to have y'all here. It's delightful to work with y'all in ministry and to see how you all engage your full selves in music and helping other people to do that as well. So if anyone watching or listening is interested in more music things, reach out to us. Atticus, give us your email address as well so they might reach out to you.
It's ahicks, H-I-C-K-S, at ogumc.org. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love for you to email me and tell me your favorite Christmas song.
Okay, bonus points if you email Atticus with your favorite Christmas song. Well, thanks again for being on the podcast here and finding it in all the places. If this is helpful for you and someone else might be interested in this season of sharing good things you find, send it to somebody else who might be interested or mention it in a conversation. There are all these ways that we as a community help other people. And so thanks for being a part of the podcast community and watching and listening online. Thanks again to y'all, and we'll see you next week in the podcast episodes. Peace, y'all.